The reading for this assignment titled Who Speaks for Justice? A human being is part of a whole. I think that there is a phenomenon that the text perpetuates throughout all the readings, and I would generalize it as there is someone at the top and there's someone at the bottom, and we both need each other. I think this was reflected several ways when it was talking about how successful the slash pine is. It was also reflected in discussing the importance of teachers and what teachers can gain from students, and not only what students can gain from teachers. It was mentioned in the constitutional people and how in order for diversity to be achieved in the constitutional people, it required an alliance from the bottom at the top. There are endless examples. Personally, when I think about a teacher's role, one of the authors was talking about how we all find ourselves in a different part of Lifeline, and how she's identifying herself as, not as she's getting older, as someone who has people that are coming after her. So someone that has to give, someone that has to pass down, someone that's no longer at the root but are more so in the tree trunk, so to speak, and they're ready to not necessarily be done with their job, but they have a lot more to give than they have perhaps to receive, if you think about it chronologically. But in regards to the connections that we have with students, I was particularly kind of like not taken back, but I enjoyed a definition that she had for education, and she simply stated that it was something along the lines of an invitation into awareness. And I think that the entire reading was, for me, an invitation to awareness, and it was more than statistics, and it was more than facts, it was more than history. It was bringing me into a space of awareness and allowing me to view education from what it could be, for the lifelong impacts that it has, that it's not just knowledge, but it's growth. And again, I love the idea of being brought into an awareness. The second part of the prompt, part B says, what are the implications of the assumptions and or the arguments? Again, I kind of already answered that, but it's that alliance, that partnership between the top and the bottom, the highest and the lowest, the majority and the minority. All of these relationships parallel the need to work together. Specifically, they talked about the Atala butterfly and how it was able to prevail despite its surroundings, and that may not be the case for everyone. The text explored some of the issues and slavery, and I honestly believe that we couldn't have got to the place that we're at without the help of people that had influence, that had a position of influence. For example, Abraham Lincoln. Did he probably just want to win an election? Did he not necessarily or solely do everything that he did just because he wanted to help the slaves? That may be true, but the point is that he was in a position of being able to help. And so that parallel is so important and is strongly implied throughout the entire reading. Part C says, what is at stake in the text's arguments for the authors and for you? Okay, so for the author, I would say is change. They defined change as, they defined I said to adapt means to learn. So they find learning through the adaptation, which comes from bringing forward change. So without it, what's at stake is our growth, is our awareness, is our education, is our ability to learn. And as I read through the text, I have to agree with the author because that is something that I didn't think of in that way. I guess I have, unfortunately, some sort of a selfish way of thinking where I just think I need to get ahead and do whatever I can to get ahead. But I think being able to put yourself through the lenses, looking through the lenses of we are a part of a line, of an infinite line. We are just one part of the timeline. We're just one piece of the pie, however you wanna slice it. We are linked together. There's someone that's next to me and they came first, and then I'm here, and then there's someone that's gonna come after me, and we all are a part of each other's story, whether we like it or not. So I think I agree with the author, and I agree with the fact that our future is at stake, right? Our awareness is at stake. Our ability to help each other is at stake. The author mentioned that not all is a sealed fate, and the only way that we can ensure that not everything is a sealed fate is by being aware of what we can have to offer, and then also giving it to those that need it, right? Again, it's the theme of standing in the gap for those that need us to stand in the gap. Part D says, who or what are the authors arguing for or arguing against? I think that the way that the text was written, it wasn't necessarily an argument, but more a presentation of truths. I think that the way that it was written, all the examples that were given, all the analogies that were given, were presented in a way that weren't necessarily argumentative, but they're more so informative. And I think as they defined education, they also handled the text. By that I mean they define education as being brought into an awareness, and they presented the context of the stories as bringing into awareness instead of just forcing an opinion. But they gave information that you can't help but to be brought into an awareness. There's really not too much to disagree on, I would say. How did the text fit or not fit in relation to your own thought or practice? Okay, so again, unfortunately, I wasn't, my thoughts and my practice at least were not in line with what the text is presenting, because the text was very deep, right? The text went, again, like suggested by the assignment, into the underpinnings of social, political, and cultural issues, and me not having had this education did not take teaching that deep. I was a VPK teacher prior to beginning my bachelor's for early childhood education, and with all that I've learned so far, I would never want someone to be in the teaching field without having all of this deep knowledge, because it is, just like the text suggested multiple times, it is deeply rooted, right? So not only are we deeply rooted and we have our roots that we're going to grow from and that we're going to help others grow from, but we, in our knowledge and our understanding of others, need to have deep roots. It needs to go beyond the curriculum. It needs to go beyond, the pay. It needs to go beyond the job description. So, that's how that falls in line with what I'm thinking. I know moving forward that I will walk into the classroom, I guess, with a greater understanding of the weight, of the responsibility, and of the influence. It's more than what meets the eye. I skipped one part, actually. It's E, that prompts how do the authors construct and articulate their arguments. Again, they do it in a very it's not aggressive the way that they present the arguments. They just show multiple examples, multiple parallels, and I would say that they're very delicate in the way that they present and articulate those, not arguments, but let's just say, for the sake of not using arguments, those facts. They do it in a very, I would say, humanizing way. It's almost emotional, I would even say, the way that the first author talks about her encounter with the environmental center and the epiphany that she had with those plants. The way that the text, the way that the author explains those encounters they're very in tune with our senses, I would say. The last prompt says, what questions do you find yourself asking after doing the reading? After doing the reading, questions that I would ask is how many people have an understanding of the importance of these connections. One of the connections that I missed, that I didn't mention, was regarding how our society is structured in a way so that we have intergenerational gaps. And again, this is perpetuating the theme that there needs to be an alliance between those at the beginning and those towards the end. Beginning and end being relative, because we all at one point take part of being beginning and being the end and being in the middle. We're all there at one point in our lives. So they specifically talk about how our society structures, right? And the industrialization set people up for children to be in school and grandparents to, be at home, and kind of like missing those opportunities to fill in that generational gap. So my questions, I guess, are, what can we do? What are we actively doing to fix that? What can we do as teachers to fix that, to make those connections? Again, the foundation of all of this is education. And so when I think about that, I think about bringing those into awareness to make those connections. There's so much personally, even with our parents. I think about how us as children think about our parents, and we almost view them for a long time until we are adults, until we grow out of our selfishness. But we view them as nothing else but parents, and we see them as those who supply our needs, and we don't think that before we came along, there's a whole entire history. They have their own roots, they have their own influences, and the majority of their life, depending on how old your parents are, were lived without you. And so I think, to conclude, I would want to bring that awareness to those around me, to the students that I influence, to take the time to fill those gaps in. Thank you.